Okay, so thank you so much. We have a special guest today joining us. Miss Arlena Strode is here, and she is the creator of the Children's Culinary Institute that we are actually now so proudly a part of at Foodology Feeding. So I'm so excited to welcome her and to hear her story and how she, really works with kids and food. So welcome.
Thank
Um,
you. Thank you for having me.
yeah, of course. So do you want to start just kind of introduce yourself and,
Ooh,
how you got started teaching
sure.
kids about how to love food?
Yeah, absolutely. So I started by going to culinary school. So I am a certified chef, and my specialty was in catering. Catering is a really hard job to also be a mom. It's every weekend. It's high pressure. You show up to places where they're like, yeah, there's a full kitchen, but then you get there and nothing works. and
Oh, no.
and so it was a really difficult job that I just shortly after graduating from school, I was like, I can't do this. Like, this is way too much pressure for me. And at that point in time, I was pregnant with my third child, and I was just really feeling the loss of Saturday soccer games. And I was working at home with my little ones cooking. And I had a couple of situations where people had come in to the house and had just seen one or more of my kids chopping vegetables, and they were like, what the heck? And mind you, this was like, I don't know, 15, 17 years ago. So there's a lot more knowledge that we have about the benefits of cooking with kids than we did then. I was operating mostly off of my culinary degree and being like, hey, you guys can do this and come in and do this. And slowly I would have people ask me questions about how to involve their kids. Or, hey, the next time you're cooking with your kids, will you invite my kid over and teach them? And so there was a problem with me continuing to cater, not only just because it was strenuous, but also because my husband's in the military. And so we moved. And catering events is really a word of mouth kind of job. So I only live any place for 2 to 3 years at a time. So by the time I would build up a business, it would be time for me to move. And
Hard.
it's definitely, if I could shout out to all the military spouses out there, it is definitely one of the hardest things about being a military spouse is you really have a hard time with your own career. And so I kind of focused more on my kids for a couple of years. And again, the same thing after our next move, teach my kids to cook, teach my kids to cook. And so I spent a summer writing a curriculum, and I spent a couple of years working with kids, just randomly saying, oh, they're actually really interested in this. Oh, culinary history is actually something that they're interested in. Oh, they're really not capable of using a knife properly until their hand hits about this size. Kids' hands at this size are typically within this age range. So I took a couple of years really kind of redefining the curriculum based on those types of things. Or, hey, this was a really expensive recipe. I'm going to try to find something that uses the same skill, but at a lower expense. And so after that, I taught the curriculum for a couple of years, and it was time for me to move, as that's what happens with, military families. And one of the moms was like, well, who's going to teach my kids how to cook if you leave? And so then I trained someone, and before long, people were calling me and saying, hey, I want to teach your curriculum in my community. And I really thought about what I was developing at that moment and saying, my gosh, we could actually change the outcome of the way people eat in the future by reaching these kids who have this interest. And as I'm teaching it, I'm saying not only do they have this interest, but they're learning. They're coming to my class and they're saying, oh, we studied these fractions in math class this week. So I'm offering a hands-on opportunity for them to really behave and interact with the math that they're learning, the science that they're learning, the history that they're learning, the geography that they're learning. And I really started incorporating that. And I created a network of people like yourself who were interested in teaching those things for various reasons, for their own personal income, for an opportunity to work with their kids, for an opportunity to use their therapy, all different reasons. And we all kind of joined together in this kind of mutual goal of using the culinary arts and the kitchen skills as a means to get someplace better than where we're at now, and helping the next generation to be the guiding point for that. So that's how Children's Culinary Institute started. And now we're 13 years into it, and we have over a dozen locations across the world, and I'm super proud of it. And I will say, however, my favorite thing to do is teach, and so that's what I love doing. And I can't ever, whenever I'm away from it, I'm always looking forward to getting back to it. So
I love that. It's an amazing story, really.
thanks.
And I love, even like what you said at the end, it's like you're like kind of changing the outcomes of all of these different kids all over the world by
Right,
teaching them about food and to love food and
right.
to appreciate food.
Well, I think one of the big realizations I had was there's a graph that the CDC puts out, and it shows the graph of the United States. And they started tracking obesity in the United States back in the 70s. And there would just be these pinpricks of red, but the most of the map would be yellow or blue, whatever the color was for, pretty neutral zones. And when it started, it starts, of course, increasing, but when it had a huge spike was about 4 years after the last of the schools gave up middle school home economics.
Wow.
So you look at that date and you say those kids who were the last generation that had homeschool economics have now just graduated from high school and are now cooking for themselves. We are seeing a huge reliance on fast food, pre-prepared food, quick and easy heat food, and that is changing the health of our country. And you can stand at any pulpit you want to and tell kids, you shouldn't have so much sugar, you shouldn't have so much salt, you shouldn't do this, you should exercise more. But without giving them the skills to how to cook those foods and how to do those things that you're saying you should, how do they? How do they do that when you've taken away all those skills from them and the ability for them to learn? And we can revert to parents and say, well, parents can teach that, but parents are part of that development of loss of home economics in school, right? And with the industrial age, we've also moved away from living near our family members and having that whole generational cooking experience where we just pass down things. And I know how to make a lasagna because I watched my mom do it. I honestly would have the hardest time giving you a recipe for a lasagna because I don't know how I learned it. I learned it from watching my mother. And we don't always have that anymore. So just putting it back on parents who are the same parents who went to the same schools that didn't have home economics are still having that same problem. However, we still have a degree in our universities called Family and Consumer Science, which is what people who teach home economics do. So we're still graduating people who are capable of teaching that, but we don't have the classes for it. So where do they go? Well, they can come here and we will help them teach the next generation. So we stop this vicious circle of you should do better, but I don't know how to do better. No one taught me how to do better. And it just continues like that.
Right. That is such a really interesting point that, you could like kind of trace it back to that time period. And, I remember when I was in school, we did cooking. It was like a small unit as a part of home ec. It wasn't like you really learned how to cook. It was more like, you baked cookies, you did like fun recipes, but it wasn't like, hey, this is how you make a sauce, or this is how you hold a knife, or this is like, blender safety. And, just like all of these little things that you think about when you cook. You mentioned math and fractions and history and geography. Like it wasn't all sort of presented in this like holistic way.
Right.
And I feel like, kids, that should be like a mandatory,
And
class for every
some
kid.
high schools offer it. I took it. I mean, I'm older than you. I took home economics when I was in elementary school, 7th and 8th grade. And I had a great home economics teacher, which is probably has something to do with the influence of where I'm at in my life. But she actually let me teach. She recognized that I had some skills and she said, why don't you teach that to the class? And I really,
That's amazing.
Right.
What a
And
great
you can look
teacher.
at where I am now and you say, oh, wow, that was really influential for you. And but we actually did like a whole semester of cooking, and we learned fractions, and we did recipes. Did we learn to the extent that I'm teaching? No, but she didn't have a culinary degree, and she really absolutely inspired. And that's one of the things that I really love about my job as well. Not only have I taught students who've gone on to culinary institutes, but I've just taught people who've become better adults. And that's really kind of the overall goal, right? Someone who's more self-sufficient and healthier in general.
I love that. And, like that's sort of, in a way, what we are also trying to accomplish, with our picky eaters is, we want them to love food, not be afraid of food, not run away from it when they see it, to sort of develop a love for it, not like
Right,
oh, I have to do this
right,
because mom said so. Otherwise, I'm not
right,
going to get my Game Boy later.
right.
Um,
Well, yeah, and I think that's the overall struggle in parenting in general. We want our kids to do the right thing because it's the right thing and not because there's some kind of threat or reward held over them. And it gets a little bit more dicey when it comes to food because we as parents get a little bit panicky about making sure our kids have the right nutrition. We're responsible for the growth of this body. And that tension that we have often is felt, whether we recognize it or not, by our kids.
yes,
And
100%. We
right.
always say that
Yeah.
is such a key factor.
Right. And you and your followers probably already have heard before too, like that aversion is kind of natural, right? We have a lot of instincts that are still caveman instincts in our bodies. And we have had times in our past generations where we did have to be really careful of what it was that we picked up off the ground and we ate. And so we still have some of those instincts. And so to relax and know that it's natural and normal, and that kind of panicky behavior doesn't help the situation. I have lots and lots of parents who come to me and are like, I can't believe he just ate that. Just because you did it and not me, because he made it and not me, that he's eaten it. I've been trying to get him to eat eggs for forever. How did he just walk out of here eating that, toad in a hole recipe that we made in class, and part of it has to do with my not being their parent. So I'm not on top of them for picking up their shoes, and I'm not on top of them for, all the other things. I see them for a 1 hour period once a week. Part of it is because I wear a jacket that's a little bit intimidating, if I'm the chef and they're going to listen, kind of thing. But a really big aspect of it is that I tell them they don't have to like it. It is okay if they don't like it, but they do have to taste it. They don't even have to swallow it. If they want to spit it out after they're done tasting it, that is totally fine, because I know that the taste buds develop based on what hits that tongue, not what goes down into the stomach.
Oh, I like
So,
that.
yeah. So if they taste it, I'm already starting to make development. And that's all I want, is to develop. And so when I take that pressure off, like I remember being a child and my dad saying to me, taste it, you'll like it. That's a lot of pressure. What if I don't like it? I'm going to let him down because he knows I'm going to like it. And so when I take that pressure off, and I said, it's okay if you don't like it. There is no requirement for you to like it. All you have to do is taste it. And if you don't like it after you've tasted it, you can spit it out. And I've had kids spit it out, and I've had kids go back for a second bite. And after weeks and months of classes with me, I'll hear their parents say, I cannot believe how much more willing they are to try things. They don't like everything, but they're so much more willing to try things. So I really think there's just a lot of pressure that comes from parents towards picky kids that they don't even realize that they're putting out there. And if they can dial that back, they'll help open the minds of the kids to actually be more experimental when it comes to food.
Right. We call that like increasing their flexibility and
Mm-hmm.
being more open to trying things, because a lot of kids are very rigid, and they've created rules around what is safe and what's not safe in their mind. So,
And the color green, for some reason, green, tomatoes, and mayonnaise. Those are the top things that I hear from kids that they don't like. And so one of the other things that I like to tell them is it's okay to say I'm picky about a certain food, But foods can be made in so many vastly different ways. It's impossible for you to say that you don't like it because you have not had it every single way it's capable of being prepared. So try it this way. It's a different way of being prepared. In fact, in our classes, we have a kind of a new foods journal where if they try a new food in class, they can write it down. They can say how it was prepared, and they can give it a thumb sideways, thumbs down, or thumbs up based on what they think. And I always say thumbs up means I love it. Thumb sideways, it means I might need to taste it a few more times. And thumbs down means I'm going to wait a long time before I taste that again. And so we're kind of talking with these thumbs in a period of timing. So I'm not ever going to never try it again, but I'm going to wait a while before I try that again. Opens up their ideas of I will try it again, just not right away. And so that even just that verbiage and an explanation of vocabulary of the way we're judging that food changes the brain in the way that we can accept food better. So
that's so funny because I created like a log journal for kids, and it's very similar. And it was the same exact idea that basically that they
Great
would
minds.
over time. We always tell our kids very similar things, a little bit different, but we always, what I've learned from taking feeding therapy classes is that there's especially kids under I think it's under 8 that they need to try foods at least 10 times before their brain decides if they like it or not. And we sort of like, I love that because it sort of separates them from their brain. And it's like, oh, wait a second. It's not me that decides. My brain decides.
Right.
So, it's like, okay, well, my brain's not sure yet. Okay, well, then I'll try to help my brain make a decision.
Yeah.
Right.
And I'll give my brain enough time to learn if it likes it or not, because it just doesn't know yet,
It's just learning. And we always say you don't like it yet.
Right.
So instead of I don't like it, it's just I don't like it yet because we might like it in the future. So we don't want to close ourselves off to that. So it's all about like the psychology of it, the wording. It's so important. So I love that you kind of continue that as well.
I can tell you too, like in the 4 kids that I raised, my older 2 were kind of, I don't know, 12, 13, 14 years old when I first started teaching these classes. So it was my younger 2 who took the classes. And I can tell you to this day, that those younger 2 are better eaters than the older 2. And and so I know without a shadow of a doubt from my own experience that getting them in hands-on creates better eaters long-term. And part of that has to do with the actual hands-on part of it. When kids are given a casserole with all the little bits inside of it, it is overwhelming. What is this and what is that and what is this? And by the time you get to the 5th item, you're out, you're tapping out, but if they were there chopping each bit, if they were there mixing each bit, smelling each bit, maybe even licking each bit as it went in, it's a different story when it's presented to them. They know what it is. They know what it feels like. They know what it tastes like. They know why it's there. And so that becomes a completely different scenario. And you'll see a lot of, I'm sure you do this too with your feeding therapy, where we separate all the food and we give them the smaller portions of each thing. So it could be the same casserole, but instead of all together, we're separating it, and as they grow out of that, they can grow out of that at a better rate if they're actually participating in that process of making those foods. Now that becomes a whole other story, because you'll end up with a bunch of parents who are like, I barely can get dinner on the table. What do you mean? I have to let him chop the bell peppers. What are you talking about? And I always just like to be actually is a really big help to you. Like, who cares if the cucumbers are perfect discs when they go into your salad? Put them at the table with a kid-safe knife, and you go in the rest of the kitchen and start making the rest of the dinner, and they're going to at least eat those cucumbers at dinner time. You know what I mean? Because they participated. Let them cut the tomatoes and cucumbers and put them in the salad, and they're going to eat salad tonight because they participated in that. And I have lots of kids who come to me who have genuine food issues, and I have yet to see progress in any one of them. So there's not a doubt in my mind, and not all of them are open to every food at this point, but there's not a doubt in my mind that letting kids cook changes that. So
Yeah. I mean, like really try to convince parents that having kids help with food prep and cooking is going to really be a game changer in
Mhm.
their progress. And
Absolutely.
some of our parents themselves don't want to cook. They don't like cooking. And I'll say, like, well, whatever it looks like for you, if it's taking food out of a package, putting it on a tray, then that's your food prep, but like get them involved at least in that
Right.
process, right?
Right. Even if you're just baking a potato, they can wash it, they can wrap it in foil, they can salt it. Like those are all things that they can do. Those are all, I mean, baking a potato is just throwing it in the oven, right? But there are a few small steps that make them own that. And there's a level of confidence that comes out when they know they helped prepare food for their family. They are a member of that family that contributes, and it changes their entire view of just dinner time.
Yeah, I love that. And I love how like you were saying that it's really like the long-term gains. It's not even like there might be some short-term gains and are very, very severe picky eaters, right? You might not see them start to taste food right away. It might be a couple of weeks or months, like you said. However, long term, the kids that get involved in cooking and and enjoy the process, they're going to be the healthier kids. And it's not even just about getting in, a different variety of foods. It's like, those are the nutrients and the vitamins they need to stay focused in school
Right.
and to learn.
Right.
We have so many kids now that just have all of these different diagnoses and attention deficit disorders. And there's like, there's a big problem with their diets as well. If they're not getting the foods and the nutrients they need to support their growth and development, then they're not going to be able to learn as well. Or,
Right.
like they're not going to be at their optimal,
Right. And
state.
those are immediate effects, right? We didn't eat dinner, we didn't eat breakfast before we went to school. We're going to be sluggish, we're not going to be focused, all these kind of things. But there's long-term effects too. There are plenty of people out there who as grown adults only eat chicken nuggets.
Oh,
And
I know. There's a few
yeah,
people I know. And that's why when people say, "Oh, I've heard that they might grow out of it." And I was like, well, the 30-year-old that's afraid of anything green
yep,
still hasn't grown out of it yet. So
right,
I don't know when he's going to grow out of it because
right,
he's
right. And I have my own kids, like my youngest daughter, she's in college and she makes dinner once a week. She's not studying culinary arts. She just grew up taking my classes. And she makes dinner once a week in her apartment for everyone, and they all pay her to make dinner. And that's kind of like her part-time job because she's good at cooking. So regardless if she's an adult just cooking for herself, she's actually using that skill to help her way through school to be able to go to the movies on the weekend or whatever it is that she's, doing. And
right.
so these are true skills, that have long-term effects that aren't just immediate. The immediate effects are what we can see and what keep us going. But long term, we hope to raise successful adults who are self-sufficient. And without these skills, I mean, I get phone calls and emails from parents all the time saying, I have 2 college-age kids who are home from school, and I really feel like I failed them as a parent because they don't know how to cook. Will you come and do a private lesson at my home? So it's not an unreal thing that happens. It's a true thing that happens. And so why wait till we get to that point? Just doesn't make
Right.
sense.
Right. I know. Oh, I love it. Well, I love what you're doing. And, you said worldwide, right? So
Yes.
people on all, corners of the planet
Yes.
can
So
learn from
because
you.
my husband's in the military, I have lived worldwide. And every time I leave a place, I leave someone else teaching there. So I've had people, I was in Germany before here. So we have someone who teaches in Germany. A beautiful woman from India called me and said, I would love to teach your classes here in India. So she teaches. We have people from all over the world who call and teach. And we're always accepting anyone who really wants to reach out into their community and help with that. They don't have to be a chef. Our curriculum's pretty easy. And if you can follow a recipe, you can help in your corner of the world. So
I love that. So where can people find you and all of
Okay.
the great things you're doing?
So you can look up our website, childrensculinaryinstitute.com, and there's a tab there for teaching with us, and there's a tab there for taking classes. And you can scroll, if you click on the tab for teaching classes, you can see all the locations. If you want to take your kids to one of our instructors, that's where you would find them. If you're interested in teaching in your part of the world, you click on the tab that says Teach with Us. So,
Awesome. That's
yeah.
wonderful. And you have some books too, right? As well?
Do, yes. So if you don't have a location in your area and you want like to teach your kids, you're like, I would love to teach my kids how to cook. I'm not really sure I know how to teach my kids how to cook. I have 3 really great books, and they're called Write My Own Cookbook. And there are 3 levels, skill level 1, 2, and 3. And so you basically have all the skills you should know at that level, the definition of them, a bunch of recipes that go along with that skill, and then a bunch of journal pages that help teach the kids how to break it down for this is what I did, these were the ingredients I used, this is the tools I used, which is a process that we do teach in classes that in the culinary terms, it's called mise en place, which means everything in its place. And it's starting to teach kids that in the culinary terms from level 1 on up. And so you could get those on Amazon, and you can use them to help teach your kids at home. Also for younger kids, like really little kids, we have 3 coloring books, which are so fun because there's 3. One's new foods, one is kitchen tools, and one is pictorial recipes. And so you basically, and every page has a little emblem on them, almost like a little sticker that you get to color when you've tried that new food.
I love that.
Yeah. Or when you have tried that new tool, or when you have tried that new recipe. And so it kind of gives them a little bit of a goal. And we're talking about, kids that are not quite old enough to start writing their own recipes and stuff down in the Write My Own Cookbook. We also have 5 storybooks. So I think if I had to do it all over again, I would go back to school and be a culinary historian. I don't think I actually knew that was a degree that existed back then, but it does exist. And I'm fascinated by the development of the culinary world. And so I wrote 5 storybooks about chefs from history who really influenced me as a culinary artist, and they have fascinating stories. And so I wrote these biographies for kids. I often do school presentations and do little cooking activities with kids at different schools across the country and bring my books. And it's a really great time. I really enjoy inspiring the kids that they could do some cool things in their lives too.
That is wonderful. And where can parents buy those books? Is that on the website as well?
Amazon and Amazon.com and BarnesandNoble.com both carry it.
Okay. And they would just look up your name?
Yeah. So the series of storybooks called Changing the World One Kitchen at a Time. They can look up Children's Culinary Institute and all of them will come up, or my name, Chef Arlena Strode, and it will all come up. But yeah, those are all available on Amazon. So
amazing. Well, thank you so much. Is there anything that you wanted to share that we missed?
I don't think so. I think we went over so much, and I just want people to not be discouraged. I feel like it feels like it could be a daunting thing, and it doesn't have to be if you take a couple deep breaths and just remember the overall goal is really developing a self-sufficient child and adult in the end. So.
Absolutely. Oh, thank you so much. I'm
No
so
problem.
happy to have you. And yes, please go check out her website and the books. All of our picky eaters would benefit from all of these tools and classes and just information in general. So thank you so much.
Thank you for joining me. I'm excited about you being on our team too.
Yes, we're happy too. All right. Thanks so much. And if you need any more information about our website, you can visit us at foodologyfeeding.com, and we will see you again. This is our last episode for the year. So we'll see you in 2024.
Thank you for listening to How to Unpicky Your Picky Eater. To learn more about achieving your child's feeding goals, check out Christine's website at foodologyfeeding.com. And be sure to tune in next time to How to Unpicky Your Picky Eater.